Hi everyone. We're just waiting for people to come on, so we'll just hold tight for a minute or so. Yeah, participant numbers ticking up, Matt. You can clearly draw a crowd.
Uh,
I think it's officially the biggest webinar Firmwell's ever done.
oh, there you go.
So
You might have me back.
yep, certainly will. Give it another 30 seconds, Jane, and then we'll kick off.
Great.
All right, we've just ticked over the 100, so let's get underway. So great to have everyone online, and I'm really thrilled today to have Matt with us. So I'm Paul, of course, one of the co-founders of Firmable. Today, really excited to dive into a topic that I find really fascinating, which is how you utilize kind of LinkedIn from a kind of an outreach and an outbound perspective. So yeah, super excited to jump into that. I guess I've got a bit of a confession to make. One of the things that I obsess a little bit about is watching, listening, trying to absorb as much as I can around best practice from an outbound kind of sales perspective. There's a heap of people I listen to, a lot of podcasts I listen to, a lot of people I follow, and I am, though, I must confess, a bit of a Matt Aird, bit of Matt Aird junkie. I really enjoy kind of listening to Matt's perspective on LinkedIn, and we've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit over the last 12 months, which has been great. And every time I speak to Matt, I learn something new about outbounding. So that's yeah. So really excited to have Matt on today. One of the things that one of the things we obviously spend a lot of our time doing is talking to customers about outbound, about growing, about go-to-market, and it's and we also, one of the things is how can we, we've learned a lot, I think, about how to do that, but there's also, what we're really trying to do is leverage people in the ecosystem who have a unique insight and have some real knowledge in that area. So that's why we're excited to have Matt on board. So just click down the next slide, Matt, and we'll just do the quick housekeeping. I think so that's all pretty self-explanatory. This session will obviously be recorded. We'll circulate it to everyone afterwards, so you've got it. I don't think you can keep your video on. We had to go to a slightly different platform just given the number of attendees, so that's not so relevant. Most importantly, though, please feel free to ask questions on the way through. There's some really interesting content. I've got a heap of questions that I'll be peppering Matt with on the way through, but please jump in with your own questions. This is really designed to be as interactive as possible. So, all right. So let's if you go to the next slide, Matt. There we go. I'm not sure people want to look at both of us, but so
Double Matt and Paul. There you go.
Right. At least I'm smiling. So
yeah, exactly.
So all right. So before we jump in, maybe give us. I just think it'd be useful context for everyone just to understand the perspective, I guess, that you have. Maybe give us a minute or two on you and also on sales science. So on
sure.
Your journey.
Sure. Yeah. So so I founded a company called Sales Science, and we exist to help early stage SaaS companies predominantly to figure out how to run kind of better top of funnel outbound. Been running the business for 6 years now, and have seen kind of a bunch of changes in the industry over that time around what you have to do to make outbound performant. It seems to get harder every year, not easier, which is keeps it interesting. But yeah, background from me is a bunch of time in B2B sales. Got really interested in in SaaS in kind of the mid 2010s. And then last 6 years kind of full time on sales science. So it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, cool. And what's the it's a super interesting journey. So I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but what have you enjoyed most about sales science over the last?
Yeah, I think it's probably the fact that we get to see a lot of companies quite early on in their journey, and then see them really progress. Like there's a handful of customers I can think of that we met them when they were if they're lucky five figures in ARR.
Yep.
And you have gone on to be $5 to $10 million in ARR over the last couple of years, raised big funding rounds, become really well-known brands, and that's always a fun part of the journey, is to have played a little bit of a role and a little bit of a part in helping Australian and New Zealand predominantly SaaS companies
Cool.
really get some traction and take off.
Excellent. So one last question before we jump into it. What is something that people wouldn't know about you from if they were following you on LinkedIn? So give us.
Yes, it's some breaking news that I actually shared with you and Jane the other day. But so I've got 3 kids and have another 2 on the way. So my wife's pregnant with twins, and we're expecting them in late October, early November. So we're gonna have a really, really full household before the end of the year.
You will. You're gonna have a busy year. So
that's right, exactly.
Very good. Excellent. All right. Well, let's jump into it.
Paul, sorry to interrupt, but I think we mentioned the chat is open. It's actually the Q&A box if people have questions.
Sorry. Thank you, Jane. Good correction. All right. So let's click through. So won't spend any time on Firmwall. I think you all kind of know what we do. We exist, I guess, to really help businesses leverage data to really kind of supercharge their sales and marketing efforts. Obviously, we focus a lot on helping people outbound. That's a kind of a core part of what we do. The job to be done, if you're just stepping back, and then we'll kind of let Matt loose. But what we really help people do is firstly identify the set of companies they should be targeting, their ICP, then who within those. Should you be outreaching to, what sort of persona? Then very practically, how do I get in touch with them? What's their mobile number? What's their LinkedIn? What's their email? And then, what we're now getting more and more into, which I think is really relevant to the conversation we're about to have with Matt, is how can I make those conversations, those outreaches, both timely, i.e., when's the right time to connect with someone, and relevant? How do I make that conversation most relevant? So a quick example of what we mean there, if you just flip to the next slide. And this is something, that's actually relevant for when Matt sells and when we sell. It's a very similar kind of signal, if you like. So one of the things we do when we're selling is we look for organizations that are just launching or starting their launching an SDR function, because in our case, if they're launching an SDR function, they clearly need data, they need prospects, and in Matt's case, they may be about to experience a pain point of this is a lot harder than they thought it was. If I can paraphrase your sales pitch, Matt. So
yeah, in a nutshell, yeah, that's it.
So that's what we do. So we naturally kind of tie into Matt's part of the world, which is we're experts in getting data and surfacing data and helping you use that. And what Matt's an expert in is, all right, how do we do that? What is the hard part? We've got the data. Now, what do we do with it? So, today we want to really focus in on LinkedIn, which is, obviously one of the ways that you can outreach to people. So I will hand to you, Matt, and away we go.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. So where I want to start today is just with a bit of an overview around how we think LinkedIn fits into kind of the broader system that you might run from an outbound perspective. So if you're going and you're building prospecting lists, so you're getting signals, let's take that example that Paul mentioned before. Let's say you've identified an account that is, let's say, hiring SDRs, and that's a signal for you that is relevant, that indicates that they're more likely to want to engage and potentially buy from you. You go to Firmable, you get the prospect information, and then what we would always recommend is that if you can, you try to speak to them on the phone. Right. There's a bunch of data that we have on this. We won't go into this today, but whenever possible, speak to prospects on the phone first. It converts at the highest rate. You're going to learn more than than you can if you reach them through any other channel. So that's where you should start. If you can't reach them on the phone, where you should go next is LinkedIn. All right, LinkedIn converts at a higher rate than email. And so we want to use LinkedIn as kind of our secondary channel. So what we're going to look at today is how we go outbound on LinkedIn without being annoying. All right, so people hate LinkedIn DMs. You don't have to scroll far on your LinkedIn feed to see, a bunch of posts like this, right? Which is like, does anyone get business from cold LinkedIn DMs? I can't use LinkedIn. My inbox is a mess. LinkedIn's a hellhole for terrible sales pitches, right? It's pretty common that people get frustrated with this stuff, and for good reason. Most of the messages or the DMs that I get on LinkedIn look like this, which is just like a wall of text with like a book a meeting with me link at the bottom of it. And we think the problem that most people are running into is that they're focusing too much on pulling the activity lever, as we call it on LinkedIn, right? Which is just, if I increase the activity, I'm going to generate more opportunities through this channel. Now, at a high level, that kind of makes sense because the equation for outbound, regardless of which channel you're using, whether this is, whether you're making cold calls, whether you're sending cold email, whether you're reaching out on LinkedIn, the opportunities that you generate or the meetings that you book is a function of how much activity you execute times the connect rate. It's how many people do you actually get into a conversation with, times by the conversion rate, which is how many of those conversations lead to next steps. Right. The problem on LinkedIn is that as soon as you pull on this activity lever too hard, and you do that typically in two ways, one is by using LinkedIn automation tools, and the second is by just copy and pasting messages to a bunch of people, is that your conversion rate falls off a cliff really quickly, right? Because your messaging and your approach starts to look like what everyone else is doing. Right. To compound that, LinkedIn is actually the only outbound channel that is rate limited, right? Meaning that you can only connect with so many people per week before LinkedIn says that's enough. You can't send any more connection requests.
This was it's obvious, right? But it's such a helpful framework. I hadn't really kind of I hadn't got LinkedIn in my head in this way, but it's such a good way to think about it. Like you've just got to think about LinkedIn a little bit differently because of this core fact, right? So
exactly right. Like, if you're sophisticated when it comes to cold email, there's no limit on how many you can send, right? You set up a bunch of domains, you set up a bunch of mailboxes, and you can go for it, right? Cold calling, there's no limit on your phone provider isn't stopping you from making the next dial, but LinkedIn will. And so what you need to do instead is really focus on those other two levers, is connect rate and conversion rate, right? Because that's where you get that's where you're going to improve the outcome through this channel. And so we think there's two ways to do that, right? Number one is using richer content mediums in your outreach, and two is to move to this kind of realm of presenting ideas as opposed to like pitching product or problems even necessarily.
So Matt, just to jump in, just a question came through from Russ, which is a good one, and kind of relevant to here. So just give us a bit of, so LinkedIn is rate limited. We get that. I guess it's not entirely clear as to what the rate is or the limit is, right? So so some comments on what the limits are, and do they vary whether you've got Sales Navigator or not? What's the kind of the algorithm around that? Do you want to make a few comments?
So it's I don't really know how it works, and it seems to be like a moving goalpost. Like we've tracked this, and it's like the number seems to change a lot, like campaign to campaign, profile to profile. We think it probably has something to do with like the number of connection requests that you get accepted. So it's some algorithm that's going, okay, how many connection requests have you sent? How many do you normally send? What percentage of those are getting accepted? What percentage of those are getting declined? And then you'll get a little warning from LinkedIn, which pops up that says, you're about to hit your limit for the week, and then you'll get cut off. Typically, it sits like somewhere between 100 to 150 new connection requests a week. But we've had some weeks where like, a couple of reps on our team have been able to push that to like 220, 230, right? But there is like, there is a cap, right? And if you keep pushing it, you're gonna hit a limit.
Does that vary if you've got Sales Nav or not?
I don't think so. So the connection requests that we're talking about obviously are the connection requests like through the native LinkedIn platform. Obviously on Sales Navigator, you can get different plans that will allow you to send more InMails. The effectiveness of those is probably a topic for another day, but just on the LinkedIn platform, I think it's probably it seems to be standalone.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So Yeah, so instead of your outreach looking like this, you want it to look more like this, right? Which is if you can show up in the inbox looking different.
You have to wear a hat. You have to wear a hat.
It helps. Yeah. If you got bad hair, wear a hat. So our outreach process in a nutshell is this. Simplified, it's basically 4 things, right? So this is a bunch of different steps here, but effectively it's 4 things. You want to get connected. So send connection requests. Once you're connected, you want to send an embedded video message, and I'll expand on each of these points in a second. In that video message, or after that video message, sorry, we want to share a resource with the prospect. And then after that, we want to follow up with an audio message and try to get into a back and forth conversation. Okay, so just to expand on each of those kind of like 4 main steps. When you're sending connection requests, 90% of the time, we just send a blank connection request, right? There's no message included in it.
I was really surprised by this. It just feels completely counterintuitive to me. Like, so I send there and I go, I try and, you've only got limited characters, like, but I try and do something that's a little bit personal, or so.
That stands out is like show that you've researched the person. Yeah. Yeah. I think that well, let's actually go to this one because we've got some data here. I think that we ran a pretty big kind of test a little while ago. My business partner and I, Matt Jennings, we ran an experiment. We reached out to, I think, about 600 prospects, CEOs, founders, and sales leaders at B2B companies in Australia and New Zealand. And we kind of split the LinkedIn connection request across 3 kind of categories. One was a blank connection request message. The other was a personalized message.
Yep.
And then the third was a template.
Yep.
A little bit of an outlier here in that the template performed the best. The templated message that we used was, hey, whoever their name was, have an actually personalized video to shoot over to you. If you accept, I'll send it across. So sparking some kind of like curiosity there, probably something a little bit unique that they hadn't seen before.
But that wasn't much better than a blank template, right? It looks
correct. Like really easy to execute on, right? It took us 2 seconds to paste that in, but massively outperformed the personalized message.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of 30% connection kind of acceptance broadly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that tends to be what we hit. And it's, over the long term, it tends to sit around that rate, kind of like regardless almost of like the persona that you're going after, regardless of the industry, regardless of whether you're sending a connection request from like a CEO's profile or an SDR's, you sit somewhere around that 30% mark.
That was my next question. Like, is your experience, if it's coming from you versus, say a new member of your team, do you get a difference?
Doesn't seem to matter. Doesn't seem to matter too much. Yeah. The interesting thing here is that the problem with this personalized at 21 is just that like they took so much longer as well, right? And so like even if you got a little bit of a bump here on the acceptance rate, you got to kind of like question how much value is in doing that. Now the reason that we like blank, but just to go back to this here, is that we think there's kind of a connection that people make between seeing a message in the connection request and then connecting that to, I'm going to get a sales pitch from this person after this. And the reason for that is that like a lot of the LinkedIn automation platforms require you to include a message in the connection request kind of like process. So a lot of the automation tools won't just send a blank connection request. And so prospects or buyers or just, people in business have connected the two, which is like, oh, if there's something in the connection request message, then it's likely I'm going to be pitched if I accept this. So yeah, I don't know, which like stick with blank unless you're getting terrible response rates. It's probably just, you're better off just sending a connection request without anything in it. Second thing is once you get connected, you get this really cool ability to be able to send these embedded video messages inside the chat, right? So you'll notice here that like this one is embedded and plays in line. This one here, whether you use like Loom or Vidyard or whatever it is, will be a link to an external, web page that people will have to click on to go and play the video. The benefit of being able to embed these video messages in line is that, as everyone kind of gets trained these days, you shouldn't be clicking on links from people that you don't know. And so, we found that we get higher kind of response rates if we can embed the video in the chat. Now, the only way that you can send these is through the LinkedIn mobile app. So you have to go into your messaging, you have to go into the messaging dialog box on the LinkedIn mobile app, click on the little plus or the, sometimes it's a plus, sometimes it's a paperclip icon in the bottom left, and then click record a photo or video, or upload a video from your camera roll, and then it will embed in line in the chat to that person. Now, the reason that we, another reason that we want to do this is because you can't, because that's the only way you can upload them, you can't automate this process, right? And so if you can't automate it, it means that 98% of salespeople aren't sending them, because, you know, sales teams, especially in SaaS, which I'm guessing a lot of the people on this webinar are from, right? There's just like an aversion now to doing anything that can't be scaled, which is, you know, pseudonym for automated, or that at least is, you know, is growing. And so if you can do stuff that other people aren't doing, it's going to give you the ability to be able to stand out, cut through the noise, and put something in there that's a little bit different and unique.
So a question from Tom on the chat. Do you get any sense that people find videos intrusive? Like, have you had any negative reactions to videos, I guess?
It's like very, very seldomly we'll get them, you know, like, I don't know, 1 in 500, where you'll get a response saying like, oh, this is like weird or whatever. You know, maybe the incidence rate is higher than that, but they just don't respond, right?
Yep.
So there obviously are people that don't reply, but it's not often that you'll get like a message back saying this is weird and don't message me anymore. Like if people want to, they can just block you, right?
Yeah, no, okay, that makes sense. And then just to get another question out. So Matt was asking about whether your LinkedIn tagline has any, in your view, has any kind of impact on your likely rate of acceptances, i.e. if sales is the key message, does that turn people off, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's not something we've really tested. Like I play around with it a little bit. I haven't seen like the connection acceptance rates vary based on me changing the tagline at all.
Yep.
It probably has some impact, right? But I don't know if anyone's figured out the secret sauce around like what that should say.
Yeah.
The thing I would say is like, I wouldn't worry too much about any of this stuff. If you can get a 30% acceptance rate-ish on your connection request message, then don't worry about kind of like over optimizing the other stuff, right? If it's well below that point, then we can look at the other things to see if we can get it improved. Yeah.
That's helpful.
Now, in this video message, all we really want to say is we want to ask them if we can share a resource that we've developed. Now, to tie this back into the, let's say we've got a signal from Firmable, which is this person's hiring an SDR, right? We might create a resource off the back of that that's like, you know, the 7-page guide on how you onboard your first SDR or set them up for success, right? Something like that. And so my video message to you, Paul, might be, hey, Paul, notice you're hiring an SDR. We've put together this guide, which you know, breaks down the 12 things you need to do to set up your SDRs for success in 2025. Let me know if you want to see a copy of that, and I'll shoot it through to you.
Yep.
Right, and that's all I'm saying in the video. I was just asking if I can share that resource with them. Now, the reason that I want to do that is because people come to LinkedIn to learn and kind of share new ideas related to business. It's generally why people are on the platform, right? But as salespeople, we kind of forget that because we're there for it's a conversion channel for us, right? It's an outreach channel. We're there to try to start conversations with prospects so we can figure out whether or not we can sell them something. But if we can tie back, if we can try to tap into that kind of like learning or insights or new ideas kind of as a way to start the conversation, then that puts us on a better footing. And the data that we've got to back that up off that last experiment that we ran recently, once we got connected to people, we ran 2 different video plays. One was like a pitch video, which is like, you know, to tie back to that signal, it could have been, hey, Paul, I notice you're hiring an SDR. You know, we've got a coaching program that helps bring SDRs up to speed. We know that, you know, they typically struggle with these 6 problems. Can we set up a call and I'll show you how we can help you to solve those?
Yep.
All right, we got a 14% response rate to the pitch video, and we got a 28% response rate to the value video. All right, so we doubled our response rate by saying, you know, hey, can we share something with you first? Now, when you're thinking about creating this resource, what I create is something that is informative, unique, insightful, interesting enough that your prospects would want to share it with their colleagues. I think you kind of like, this is the way that I capture this. I think you you kind of put it more elegantly the other day when we were going through this material, Paul, which is just like just something that's educational, right? Something that's going to teach them something. Is basically what we're trying to get across here. Is like, can we put something together that's going to teach them something new, that positions us as an authority or an expert or someone that has something unique or interesting to say within the space.
It's that old, if you can tell someone something they don't know, that's it's the key to unlocking sales often. So.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So don't fall into the trap here of like trying to send across like a thinly veiled sales pitch or a comparison doc that shows why your product's better than another or whatever it is. Like really just focus on trying to be educational and informative in this first touch. And so that could be a bunch of different things, right? It could be like proprietary data that you have. It could be a unique view of the industry. It could be a forecast on future trends. It could be analysis of the current state. There's a bunch of different things. Another cool one that we talked about the other day, Paul, that you brought up is like, it could even just be like a curation of helpful resources from the industry, right? So it's like you could just really easily like put a PDF together. Let's say you're selling to accountants. Put a PDF together that had like 6 really interesting resources for accountants based on industry trends. It could be like it could be a really good podcast episode. It could be an industry white paper. It could be a podcast from a thought leader. It could be a talk at the latest Zero Roadshow, whatever it is, right? But it's like, if you could even just curate stuff, you don't have to go and put the hard work together of creating like a 40-page ebook that tries to make you look like a genius. Just put something together that's going to be like useful and helpful for the people that you're trying to start a conversation with.
Yeah, the other comment you made to me, I was like, oh, it just feels overwhelming trying to pull together a resource, and I need to lead on marketing. And you were like, you don't know, you just gotta, just be a bit creative. Just get out there, just try. Yep. Well, that was really helpful advice.
Yeah. Right. And then once we've shared that resource, so we're on the 4th step now, right? We've got connected, we've sent the video message asking if we can share something. We've then shared the resource with them. Then a couple of days later, we just want to circle back and try to start a conversation, right? And the way that we do that is by asking what we call a this or that question. So if we go back to the the hiring an SDR option, it could be, hey, Paul, how are you thinking about, hey, Paul, notice that this is your first SDR hire. How are you thinking about bringing them up to speed? Are you going to train them internally, or are you going to rely on some third-party help to get them up to speed? Right. So it's like you ask a question with, 2 options. The reason that we do that is just that it makes it easier for them to respond, right? And to get that conversation started. You don't want to ask a big open-ended question that requires like a detailed response from someone, because they're less likely to go through kind of like the lift to do that. And then the way that we send that is in the form of like an audio message. So again, the only way that you can send these is through the LinkedIn mobile app. So again, you open up the message box. On the bottom right-hand corner, there'll be a little microphone. You click on that and you can record an audio note. The reason, again, that we want to send these is because just like simply they can't be automated. It allows us to stand out. It shows that we are, we're putting the effort in to try to start a conversation with you. We're not just going through the motions here. And it creates kind of that reciprocity with the person that goes, hey, they're actually really trying. This is unique. This is differentiated. It's different. Let me take the time to respond.
And you think that's the key reason why audio versus text works better?
I think it's part of it, right? I think like the medium is almost part of the message here, which is just that like, if you can show that you're going through, or you're taking the extra effort and you're being differentiated, like. Yep. The amount of times that we'll get people responding just to say like, this is the best outreach I've had, right? It's not even like tied to whatever you're saying. It's just like, oh, this is really like good and creative outreach, just because you're doing stuff that they haven't seen before, right? Audio messages are certainly like much more common now than embedded videos are. Like more people are catching on to the fact that these kind of convert well, and so that they are, prospects have definitely seen them more over the last couple of years, but still like much less common than just text.
And any guidelines on length? So there's a question.
Typically under 30 seconds for the Slate follow-up. You don't want it to be too long. Yeah. And then the video message, again, like 30 to 45 seconds.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Now, the reason that we want to execute our outreach in this way is that we're effectively running like a non-pushy double opt-in in a sense, right? So Sush, oh, maybe you're on the webinar, Sush. Oh, sorry, let me go back here. Sush is like a great prospect for us. And send him a video message, didn't respond, send him a really short audio bump, didn't respond, and so I leave it there, right? For now. I may cycle back in a few months' time, but I want to leave it there for now. The reason for that is that one of the things people forget on LinkedIn is that your conversation history is threaded forever, right? It's not like email where you can start a new thread and maybe the person doesn't remember that you reached out to them, 3 months ago. If you're reaching out on LinkedIn, your conversation history stays there for good. And so a lot of people, if you kind of spam this channel, you can get a lot of results really quickly, but you can also burn a bunch of your market, right?
I hadn't twigged that. Like you're so right. It just lays it all out there, right? There's just nowhere to hide.
Yeah. Exactly. And so like whenever this guy reaches out to me again, like as soon as he sends the first message, I see that like he sent me 6 messages, 3 months ago, whatever it was, and I'm just like I'm immediately turned off.
Yeah.
Right. So just be really careful. There's a lot of like, LinkedIn agencies out there that will say, hey, we'll generate a bunch of pipeline for you on LinkedIn. Just give us access to your LinkedIn account and we'll take care of it all. Just be careful that their approach isn't just absolutely hammering your market, because it's going to make the channel pretty hard to be fruitful over that, when you try to go back to and recycle these people again in the future.
Cool. Now, a bunch of questions that have come through. So one that you and I chatted briefly about before, and also has come up on the chat, is one of the things that I struggle with is how do I kind of track my LinkedIn outreach? Like how do you, there was a question on the chat about how do you track acceptance rates? Can you talk through your system around how you track it, how you think about integrating with the CRM, just some really practical hints on how you think about that and kind of what you do?
Yeah, it is actually a bit of a pain in the ass, because so we run Salesforce as a CRM, and there isn't a really good way to get LinkedIn, native LinkedIn data from the LinkedIn platform back into Salesforce. There's obviously integrations from the Sales Navigator mailboxes back in, but the native LinkedIn platform is difficult. If you're on HubSpot, you've got an advantage because there's a tool called HubLead, which integrates native LinkedIn message boxes back into HubSpot.
Yep.
We don't have that advantage, so it is like largely manual for us. We've set up some kind of like some reports in HubSpot that allow us to track where we're up to in terms of, who have we sent connection requests to, who have we sent messages to, that then, calculates conversion rates off the back of that.
Yep.
But that is kind of largely like a manual workaround. In terms of managing it day to day, like let's say you're an SDR and you're in the seat and you're responsible for executing a campaign like this. The recommendation that I have there is just to kind of batch all of the similar activity at the same time. And then what ends up happening is that you'll know where you're up to with each prospect because they're kind of like grouped together in your LinkedIn inbox, if that makes sense, right? So you'll get a bunch of people that you've sent the video message to. And if you send all the video messages out at the same time when they were due, then they'll all be sitting in the inbox at the same time. And you just scroll down, you find the video messages, and then you send the audio.
Yep.
Right. And then you'll find a bunch of people that you sent the audio to that you then need to follow up with on chat. And it's like they're kind of grouped together in the message in a chronological order. But yeah, it is kind of finicky. If you're on HubSpot, you've got the advantage. You've got HubLead. If you're on Salesforce, it is a little bit trickier.
And when you say batch them as your best practice, you would kind of do it once a day, and then so do you ignore it? Like, how do you personally think about that, and how do you?
Yeah, just batch it and do it once a day. Yeah. Again, like for SDRs, again, it's like you should be focusing on conversations over the phone, and then it's like batch the LinkedIn activity into an hour a day or something. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then another, I guess another question that comes up a lot is, there's the whole world of sequences and cadences. Like, should you integrate should you think about integrating your cadences? There's obviously tools out there that do LinkedIn cadences. I suspect I know your perspective on that, but do you want to kind of, how do you think about that?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this is probably this is a longer conversation we could have, I think, which would be interesting. But so the way we think about it is that the channels have different conversion rates. And you
Yep.
should try to maximize conversations in the higher converting, that maximize the number of conversations you have in the higher converting channels before moving to the lower converting ones.
Yep.
Right. So we don't run multi-channel outbound sequences.
Yep.
So we don't have, day one call, don't pick up, send an email, and then try to connect on LinkedIn. We don't run sequences that way because for us, although, or at least the way I think about it is like the worst possible outcome for me is that I send an email to a prospect and they reply unsubscribe or I'm not interested. And there's someone that like would have just picked up the phone if I had called them.
Yep.
Right. Because like I miss out on all the context around, well, why are they not interested? Well, how are they getting the job done today? Is it just because they're not the right person? Is it because they just bought something? Like I can get that context over the phone. If they just reply to my email, I don't get the chance to get any of that.
Yep.
So yeah, phone first. If they don't pick up 5 call attempts, move to this LinkedIn approach. If they don't connect with you on LinkedIn, then go to email. And that's kind of the way that we run outbound.
What are the trends in LinkedIn? So it doesn't feel like it's quite as prevalent that you've got kind of the AI generated kind of content on LinkedIn, or what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so there's a new tool we're just about to look at actually called Valley, which is kind of like an AI SDR for LinkedIn.
Yep.
So we're going to explore that in the next little bit. I think if it's anything like kind of the email AI SDRs, like it might be beneficial if you have a really large TAM and you're kind of like resource constrained on the go-to-market side.
Yep.
I think probably less valuable if you have a tighter TAM, or at least like a higher ACV that can justify kind of like more human input, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's different trade-offs and different approaches that you could take based on like, yeah, your market and your price point and things like that.
Okay. Pretty good. So that I think I think that's the end of your flow, isn't it, Matt?
That's it for me. Yep.
Yeah, cool. So so we've got a few questions here. Let me just check, see if there's any that makes sense. One kind of tactical one from Matt. How do you think about downloading or accessing the resources? Do you use external links, or how do you think through that?
Yeah. So a couple of different ways that we've done this. So there's a really cool tool called Page, PAAGE.io, I believe, which basically is like a resource for sellers that allows you to track views on a document. So you go in and create a document in there, you share the individual link with the person that you're sharing the resource with, and then you can see how much time they're spending on the document, which pages they're looking at, what are they assessing, so that you can kind of gauge interest around who you should be following up with. So you could use a tool like that. Another thing we've done in the past is like the resource is just a loom or a vidyard of a slide deck. And then we share that, and then we get insights around how much time did they spend watching it.
Yep.
So you could just do like a 5-minute overview of a deck you've created, and you send that as like a 5-minute video for them to consume.
Yep.
So those are the two common approaches that we use. We want to try to get some insights around like, are they consuming the content, so that it can inform like how aggressively we follow up or not, kind of moving forward.
So that's the key takeaway. If you can get insight into how they're engaging with it, that then helps.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, especially if you've got other stuff to do, right? You can't follow up with everyone endlessly. It's like, try to figure out who's the top 20-30% of prospects that you should really be trying to chase down. Yeah.
And then one thing you haven't really talked to is, how do you think about the time between interactions? Like, is it like, because you don't want to be annoying, obviously, but how do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we want to send the video as like within a day of them accepting, typically. And then what we'll do is then as soon as they've said yes, sure, send me the resource, you kind of want to get that over as quickly as possible as well.
Yeah.
And then you probably leave it a couple of days before you send the follow-up, which is that audio note, right? And then the interesting thing on the once you're in a back and forth conversation, so once you've started that kind of like back and forth dialogue, is you kind of want to mirror their response times. So if you message them and they're kind of like they're in the chat and they're going back and forth with you now, then you kind of want to be doing that. If they're waiting a little while to respond or they get back to you the next day, then you kind of want to mirror that as well. So you don't want to like, you kind of want to match their urgency or their response times when you're in that back and forth dialogue.
Yeah, got it. So no, that makes sense. Excellent. So any kind of final, kind of thoughts or
yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention is you want to have a field in your CRM to be able to track what we would call like LinkedIn validated leads, right? So these are people that have accepted your connection request. And the reason for that is because you now know that that's a channel that you can reach this person on in the future. And that's important because if you've got an SDR that's executing this outreach and they leave or they get promoted or they're not managing that account or that contact anymore, and someone else is taking it over, you want to be able to give them the insight around, okay, is this person active in this channel and have we communicated with them there before?
So even if the person who had the connection has left, it's still useful
correct.
to know that,
yeah, exactly.
Prospect Y is amenable to LinkedIn interaction.
Exactly right. So you want to have like a field in HubSpot or Salesforce that says like LinkedIn validated.
Yeah.
And you should have that, just a free tip for everyone, probably across all 3 channels, right? Which is like if they've picked up a phone call from you before and you've had a conversation, you want to mark them as phone validated. Likewise on LinkedIn, they become LinkedIn validated. If there's an email response, they want to be email validated. So
no, that's a super practical one. Note to full team. We should do that.
yeah, there you go.
So cool. Sorry. Any final questions? There was a question asking, sorry, we try not to jump into kind of acronyms, but SDR stands for Sales Development Rep. So that's what's commonly understood by that is someone who is, this is your area, not my map, but someone who's is actively on the phones trying to connect with people with the objective of booking a meeting. Is that a good definition?
Yeah, kind of like pre-sales in a sense, right? It's like they're trying to find the people that have the interest or the problems, and then they're setting up meetings for your closers or your salespeople. Yeah.
So but it's exactly. So just seeing if there's any final questions on the chat. One question coming through: how far would you try and continue the conversation before you kind of look to, because ultimately you're trying to get a meeting, right? So that's that's where it's all leading to. How far would you try and continue before, I guess, trying to lock in that meeting?
Yeah, so I think like this or that question should be more closely tied to how you can help and the problem that you solve.
Yep.
And especially if you're running off the back of a signal, then that's a really easy thing to tie into, right? Because the signal typically ties to like a pain point or a problem.
Yep.
So if you get a response to that, then you want to try to do like some pre-qualification or enough to understand whether or not the problem exists for them, whether or not they have a solution to it today. And then if they don't, just ask for the meeting, right? And you want to do that in a kind of like creative way. But it's like, hey, Paul, like, look, you're in a similar situation to, other companies that we've helped, like A, B, and C. If you'd like, I can set up a, 30-minute call and kind of like walk you through how we've helped other people with that before. You don't have to spend, forever kind of like greasing the wheels. If there's a problem, they've acknowledged there's a problem there and you think you can help them, ask for the meeting, right? Worst case scenario is they say no, they're LinkedIn validated. You can come back in 2 or 3 months' time and try to start the conversation again. Yeah.
Just jumping through some more questions here. Russ, yes, and a few people ask this because it's a fantastic resource. We'll definitely share the recording, and I'm sure Matt is happy to share his slide deck as well. So no issues there. Question, we touched a little bit on this before, but do you recommend AEs or SDRs creating their own content? Are you good idea, bad idea?
It's probably like probably depends on the person, right? Like I think you got to assess it like case by case. If it's the first time that they're doing it, I would probably want to review it. And just kind of like sign off on it. If they've made a few resources before that are really good, then you probably give them, more leash there. I think just kind of, common sense approach to that. Yeah.
So you've obviously spent a lot of time training your team to be good at this. Any kind of, coaching sales reps is not always easy. Kind of coaching tips, or how have you kind of embedded this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the key thing is just like give them the room to kind of be bad at it initially, and just give them the confidence that like it's actually quite hard if you've never done it before, is to record a video to someone. And so you've really just got to instill in them that like the only way you're going to get good at this is to record 100 shitty ones so that like the 101st one is good.
Yep.
And a real practical tip around that is like just try to get people to do it in one take. So like pretend you're actually speaking to the person as you're recording. And then if you stutter or you forget what you're saying, you just try to correct yourself on the fly, because it actually comes through as more natural. You don't want it to look scripted, right? You want it to look like you've, yeah, exactly. You want it to be authentic, right? So give them the permission to like sound robotic and really scripted on the first like 100 of these, because then that's the only way to get good at it, right? And just like, yeah, just tell them that that's going to be the case. If they're good off the bat, then awesome. And if they're not, then it's like they'll get better. So
yep. Cool. Also had a question whether you're happy to share a couple of sample videos. I'm sure if you DM Matt directly, he would be very happy to, you know.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way. If you get connected with me on LinkedIn, then I can just, yeah, I'll send them to you so you can see what they look like on the platform. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I think that has been fantastic. So I've made 3 or 4 notes of things that we need to do differently. So thank you for that.
No worries.
As always, learn a lot. So thank you so much for jumping on and just giving such a practical kind of view on how to engage and, you know, how to use LinkedIn as a channel. I found that super informative, and I suspect many others did too. So if people want to have a deeper conversation with you about this, or, you know, all things outbound, how to build an outbound function, what should they do?
Yeah, just get connected with me on LinkedIn is the best channel. Get connected with me there, and yeah, reach out. Happy to chat to anyone that wants some help.
Awesome. And of course, if you want to learn more about Firmable, you can check us out at firmable.com. Jump online. You can get a free trial. And I'm also very, very happy to ever chat to anyone who's got questions, insights on anything kind of go-to-market, outbound. I love chatting outbound and sales and go-to-market. So as you can probably tell. So excellent. Well, thanks, Matt. Enjoy the rest.
Cheers, Paul.
And look forward to catching up with you in New Zealand in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See ya.